Sorry for starting late. We are Persians. But you know, we are supposed to come late. Before we start, I want to remind you all to turn your phones on silent or just turn them off. And feel free to take pictures and videos, but make sure that you're not using flash. And then I want to say that today we have a professional videographer here today, so you just can relax and sit back and watch the talks, and we're gonna record the videos and we're gonna put them on YouTube so you can share later on with other folks, or you can just watch them later. So don't worry about recording stuff if you don't want to. Then I gotta tell you that the exits are on the side and on the back. And absolutely no foods and drinks except water in here. And finally, ladies, the bathroom is a little bit further back on the left side. If you don't find it first, just continue going, it's there. We have a bathroom for women. Okay. And then I would like to invite Tarane Rusta, the president of Voices of Women for Change, to the stage for the talk. Oh wait, one more second. I also, if you have any questions or about the conference or things, you can find anything. We have a few volunteers in the room. I just want to ask them to raise their hand first. Yep, there's at least one or two over there. Megan and Christian, you can reach them if you need anything for any questions. And now let's welcome Tarane Rusta, the president of Voices of Women for Change.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our conference today and thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. I know you could have stayed in the bed longer and had a good breakfast, but it means a lot to us. We're still expecting a lot of people who've signed up are not here yet. I think it's because they're in the bed. But I'm going to start my opening remarks and then we're going to move forward with our program, so we won't delay it any further. As women, we all share universal and institutionalized gender-based discrimination and oppression throughout the history. But we also share another common thread that binds us all together. We share resiliency, a strength, and individual achievements that become our collective achievements and collective achievements that impact all of us individually. Our stories may have different colors, different ethnicities, different orientation of love. But despite the rainbow of experiencing our existence as women, we all share our hopes and dreams for a world free of gender-based discrimination and violence. Today we are standing on the shoulders of thousands of pioneers and women's rights activists, and millions of ordinary but enlightened women who have fought tooth and nail so we can vote today, so we can own property, and to be able to live up to our full human potentials. But we still have a long way to go to achieve complete gender equality and gender justice. Today, our conference is a tribute to women who are moving beyond barriers and are changing the landscape of power relations, women who no longer accept what they cannot change, but they change what they cannot accept. It is a tribute to women who are changing the narrative about worldviews on power, leadership, and norms and cultural practices that view women as inferior and possessions. The new narrative is not against men, but against patriarchy. And indeed, millions of enlightened and progressive men have joined the gender equality movement in the hopes of contributing to a world without discrimination and violence against women. Because progressive men know that nobody is free while the other half is oppressed. And true gender equality liberates men from sociocultural constraints of gender roles and sexism. Unfortunately, in the past few years, women's basic human rights have been targeted by repressive patriarchal agents embodied in the political right wing and religious fundamentalists around the world. These united attacks present us with new challenges and obstacles that require new solutions. And throughout history, women have learned to view every challenge as a new opportunity. But this time, women not only are turning challenges into opportunities, but they are creating new platforms that are inclusive of women of color, immigrant women, women from LGBTQ community, women of low socioeconomic status, women of different ethnic backgrounds and races, and all other marginalized women. Women are harnessing their strengths, their shared struggles, and their visions. And turning them into a powerful force that moves everyone forward with them. They are creating a paradigm shift by harnessing the power of meaningful and just political participation and policy making, advocating for environmental justice, taking on gun violence, advocating for the passage of the Women's Bill of Rights known as CEDAW, taking on institutionalized racism, and use of social media and the internet that distinguishes this generation of activists from the previous waves of feminism. Today, we strive to highlight different pathways to gender equality and examine how activism, use of technology, and use of literature can empower women and can create a new model for non-patriarchal power and leadership, which is collaborative and transformative. Today, we want to celebrate all women who are moving all of us beyond barriers and hopefully to inspire you to become part of this dynamic and progressive movement if you already haven't done so. So thank you so much for being here again, and we continue with the rest of our program.
Good morning, everyone. We are honored to have as our keynote speaker a renowned journalist, a prolific writer, and an activist, Harvey Nagli. She has won many awards, most recent the 2015 Walks Women Dita. Please welcome Harvey Nagli.
Hello to everybody. For saving the time, I'm going to read.
صدا نمیاد اگر میشه
And so I'm going to read what I'm going to say, so hopefully to finish it soon. I try to make it shorter, but if it's a little long, please forgive me. Thank you for inviting me to the Bay Area Women's Conference 2019. I'm honored to be here to talk with you and not for you, and sharing with you my thoughts about the multifaceted challenges that are all facing in multiple diverse movements. On the day of my arrival to San Jose Airport, the immigration officer was confused and asked why I had a US visa in my Swedish passport. I gently replied to her that it's because I am an Iranian. She continued to ask why I couldn't obtain an ESTA. I suggested that we should actually forward the question to our governments and hold them accountable for the current systematic misconduct of the past 40 years. In one hand, a totalitarian regime, and on the other hand, a neoliberal capitalist state. As always, there is a need for a clarification that is to be truthful and for marking out a starting point for the conversation between us. I am a woman of middle-class origin from Tehran, and my feminist activism started in Iran. To be more precise, it started exactly after the Iranian Revolution in February 1979, at the age of 11, when I emotionally felt how private is political. By observing and sharing the painful condition of foremost my mother, and later on the rest of my family caused by the legitimization of polygamy for men in Iran. But still, the brightest sign emerged much earlier at the beginning of the revolution, when the self-proclaimed religious leader announced the compulsory hijab for girls and women according to Sharia law applied by the newly formed Islamic Republic of Iran. Since the essence and thereby the infrastructure of the social, economical, and political struggles of the Islamic Republic of Iran are based on a normative and non-tolerant masculine domination, is by definition an anti-feminist process that targets and reproduces hate against gender, women, and feminism. Therefore, I am truly honored to be a part of the feminist movement, and I hereby pledge to continue our common struggle beyond the obvious equal right. I strongly believe that we must reorganize ourselves in order to conduct feminist activities moving toward achieving our goals. My strongest standpoint is to be amongst you. I do not in order to promote a book, a site, an academic paper, or product for sale. My only request of you is to engage in a fruitful and constructive discussion with each other. As Sarah Ahmad emphasized, we truly need the physical meeting rooms in order to develop and adopt new methods of reorganizing us toward to multi-diverse challenges of a digital era. The speech is basically divided into three sections, of which we have already covered the first part of that. The second part is a short historical review of the feminist movements in Iran in the past 2 decades, and more interesting, the hurdles and blocking points of the different eras. The third part is shading by my thought about the diverse movement and thus the many multifaceted challenges. In this second section, I will talk briefly about the feminist movement in Iran in the past 20 years. In the first decade, I lived inside of Iran and participated in hands-on to the women's movement and the participatory and inclusive unification of social movements. I have lived outside of Iran in the second decade and witnessed at distance and feminist movement diversification. My speech today emphasized mainly on the blocking points and hurdle that, in my belief, has obstructed the feminist process of each decade. Between 1979 and 2005, Khatami was elected president with the reformist and pragmatist ballot, and thereby the economic reconstruction era emerged toward a more open atmosphere, allowing secular women to self-organize around social issues. The numbers of NGOs increased and women organized around a multitude of areas such as social awareness, gender equality, discrimination and violence against women in multiple networks, platforms and public spaces. The main success of the period were the growth of civil society organizations, empowering of women and thus coalition and the networking infrastructure that were formalized. As an example, the coalition between the different women's movement was named Halandishi, Women Halandishi. The most successful and biggest demonstration formed against violence in constitutional law. It proved that we could organize the powerful within different movements upholding focus on similar demands. The main obstacle that women's movements faced were keeping the distance and thereby preserving their independence toward the government, funding regulation, and last but not least, the organizational power relationship. The second era occurred at Ahmadinejad presidency between 2005 and 2013, whereas I lived inside Iran until 2009. The era was influenced with neo-conservative action and populist remarks that increased the repression of all non-governmental movements and social movements. The social collapse peaked at the fraudulent re-election of 2008, where many activities among ordinary people were imprisoned while demanding a just election turnout. The main success of the period was the women's movement was the emphasis on legal reforms and successful campaign, such as 1 million signature campaign against discriminatory law. This aim was possible to reach since the women organization had the same vision but different perspective and utilized inclusive methods for attracting a greater public participation. What we are witnessing recently from 2013 and forward under Rouhani's presidency is a major reorganizing of a multitude of social movements within Iran, even though the oppression against the social movements is elevating. The social protests are peaking in numbers in major cities as well as in rural areas. The hardliners are conducting activities. Workers, teachers, students, cultural workers, environmentalists, and solo public demonstration to long-term imprisonment preceded usually by torture and forced televised untruthful confessions. The main success of women's movement is the shift and dynamics, the participating patterns that has occurred. This is vividly acknowledged by the more radical actions among women from December 2018. And forward examples for organizing a demonstration in front of the Labor Department in 8th of March, or participating in the 1st of May gathering, and also in different formation of civil obedience against mandatory dress code. My understanding is that these women are no longer only demonstrating for gender based on civic equality rights and demands. They are now being supportive and even participating as speakers in various social movements and protest rallies, such as with the workers' union at the teachers' protest and the students' uprising. The main obstacles and challenges of today's coalitions is how to stay true and focus on your movement's aim and still be able to collaborate with a conceptual setting on diverse matters. The process should be about dating to discuss our differences prior to our similarities in order to move forward within the diverse movements of today. Our political standpoints are vital and crucial to our coalition building since the contextual meaning of, for example, mandatory hijab inside of Iran is different from the extreme high-wing demands of prohibiting hijab at Swedish workplaces. The multifaceted challenges are intersectionally intervened with major life concerns such as neoliberal policies, demands of nationalism, religious fundamentalism, oppressive states, and widespread militarism surrounding us no matter where we live. We are indeed of reorganizing more collective feminist movements to learn how to deal with and shed light upon the diverse challenges facing us, since the way we think shapes the way we work together. Regarding the recent events and the unproportionally reactions against women, I strongly believe that Iranian women's movement is headed toward adopting a multifaceted feminist approach, which is indeed optimistic. This is the essential and the cardinal reason why the Islamic regime treats feminism as a primary enemy of the state. In the following session, I will discuss the anti-feminist agenda of the Islamic regime as a systematic and political standpoint based upon the theocratic masculinity norm in the society. This set of tools for repression is sustained by partly harsh long-term individual punishment toward women and partly collective socio-economic punishment toward the families and loved ones of the imprisoned women. The term femicide has been used since 1974 and was originally thrown up by Carol Orlak and widely used by Diana E.H. Russell. The very simple definition of femicide is the killing of females by males, only because they are female. In solidarity and with great responsibility, I hereby choose to involve and context of the word femicide when speaking of the mistreatment of our sister activities or simply the women in Iran by the anti-feminist regime. I choose the henceforward accuse the Iranian regime for femicide since women are structurally being singled out, harassed, physically and mentally tortured, and finally sentenced to long-term imprisonment by lengthy question and ambivalent verdict. I will extremely my standpoint with three recent incidents. Since the crackdown, the uprising of December 2018, many harsh verdicts have been handed out of mostly peaceful protesters. While witnessing the treatments of the captured workers, students, and teachers, it is the conspicuous how the Islamic regime is shamefully sentenced the protesters and severe penalties linked to the so-called undermining of national security. The behavior pattern that can be observed is how the supporting women of the diverse social movements are being treated and hence convicted not only protesters but also feminists against that are undermining the national security by supporting other movements while having a feminist agenda. This merely unveiled the naked fear of the feminist movement by the regime. There are as if be several young females with verdicts ranging up to 20 years in prison for supporting workers and questioning the hijab. In another diverse universe, but still in the capital of Iran, we have another example. A wife is murdered by the handle of her husband, a famous former minister. The murderer has prepared himself in the kill is achieved and the forward through by phone call where the murderer surrendered himself to the authorities. By the act of DA, financial compensations paid to the heirs of the victim, the male murderer was free, but of course now he's in jail. In yet another disturbing incident recently, a female photojournalist has been detained and coerced to obtain a Twitter password belonging to an account critical to world regime. These examples mentioned here display a clear indication of struggle, security, and literal situation facing women in Iran only because they are women. This is the simple definition of femicide. Please bear with me when I repeat the section. When I repeat the section mentioned before. The multifaceted challenges are intersectionally intertwined with major life concerns such as neoliberalism, politics, demands of nationalism, religious fundamentalism, oppressive states, and widespread militarism surrounding us, no matter where we live. We are in need of reorganizing more collective feminist movements to learn how to deal with the shed light upon diverse challenges facing us, since the way we think shapes the way we work together. Thank you for listening to me and for opportunity to talk with the judge. It was in a different period, was changing, because if you see that after the revolution, it was the hijab was changed like a normative form. It was norm because of the war, because of the Islamic everything that comes. So I just remember that even I was doing that, and even I was like as a disobedient in the school against the hijab. But after during the war, I just accepted that we had something like hijab as a law and something that existed. So it was not very easy to handle with that, because that time there was not no movement and no people. Just the only part, it was the first decade that women had the oppression against the hijab, and then they were killed, they were escaped, and so we had this gap for connected with the two-generation debate about hijab. But after this period, we, for example, such as me, we started to writing about hijab, and it was difficult either, because there was some censor about in writing and in reading. So it means that this is not very easy to go through hijab, because at that time it was some kind of punishment was so high, and it was difficult and dangerous. But in other parts, in a discourse of discourse of hijab in the society, I think it was something else happened, because it was an individual action. And in individual form, people started to change the hijab with the form of the dress code, because you cannot see the form of the hijab in the first decade and during the Ahmadinejad or Khatami. It was different. So it means that this kind of discourse has a more powerful impact on the society by the people and individual people that they make it to changes for this one. So, and in this case you are right, because movement was up in the back of what's going on in the society, because as an activist and movement, you have to try to bring yourself in the society and make a communication. And if you wanted to start from something that is so dangerous and people don't want to accept it at that time, it was very difficult to go through the society and to have a connection with society, such as 1 Million Signature campaign. We talked about the hijab, but we couldn't write it on that, because nobody commented to signed the petition for us. So I'm just, should I say? So maybe I can explain more later, because I didn't have.
Thank you for your speech. One movement in Iran is political. Everybody knows about that. But in your speech, you kind of use some phrases like economy liberalism or liberalism economy next to the fundamentalist or something like that, or oppression. I'm kind of wondering why you are using that and what is that in your kind of, let's say, space, in your kind of speech.
No, I just try to show that what was the situation, the different effects. For example, what happens, we have some different governments, conservative governments, and then after that reformist government. And during these times, we try to open the spaces for ourselves. But it doesn't mean that I'm thinking about that these are the different, I don't know if could I explain or not. I don't want to mention that the women movement is not political. I'm just trying to say that's how we could try to open our spaces at that period, that the slogan was like the author's slogan was that.
My question is more related to using the liberalism next to the oppression and fundamentalism. Why you are using
Neoliberal, I'm just saying a neoliberal.
Neoliberal in Iran?
No, neoliberal is the policy.
Okay.
This.
I believe a lot of differences there. Thank you.
We'll have no time after the other speakers.
There'll be more time for questions after the two speakers. Ruth Silvertop is a lawyer and activist. As a member of the Silicon Valley CEDA task force, she worked tirelessly to ensure its passage and enforcement. Currently, she's a supervising attorney at the Workers' Right Clinic at Santa Clara University Law School. Please welcome Ruth Silvertop.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here today. Today I'm going to be talking about CEDA, and CEDA is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And it's an international agreement that affirms the principles of fundamental human rights and equality for women around the world, and to ensure equality for women and girls in the civil, political, economic, social, and cultural arenas. 187 countries out of 193 have ratified the CEDA, and those are countries in the United Nations. Does anybody have any idea which country has not ratified? United States. And how did you guess? Another country is Iran, exactly, okay? There's also, you probably won't guess the other ones, but there's Sudan, Somalia, Palau, and Tonga. But all other countries of the world have ratified it. It is. And this is a map of the countries that have ratified CEDA. Okay, so CEDA, how many of you have heard of CEDA? Great, okay. It's the Women's Bill of Rights, actually, the Bill of Rights for Women. And it ensures equal access to and equal opportunities in both political and public life. And you would think it would be a no-brainer, for countries to ratify that. It defines discrimination against women, and it sets a framework for action to end discrimination. And it provides the basis for realizing equality between men and women through ensuring that women have equal access to an equal opportunity in political and public life. And there is, because this CEDAW has not been ratified in the US, the strategy became to set up a Cities for CEDAW campaign. And that's been a much more successful campaign. So basically, we're making the global local. And we're implementing this convention in cities and counties all across the United States. And it's very exciting that San Francisco, that often is in the lead in the country, has implemented CEDAW, and there's been really spectacular results because of CEDAW. There's been violence against women prevention and intervention grants for programs, 44 months without domestic violence homicide. So that's really an impressive number. There's also the Public Works Department puts better street lights on the streets. And the Department of Juvenile Probation created a girls unit. It provides gender-specific trauma-focused services for girls. And then there's been an increase in female employment in professional jobs within the city. And a gender equality principles initiative to expand gender analysis. So that's really important. And there's a quote from Susan B. Anthony, which is very true, that unless the only way we can get complete equality is when women help to make laws and elect lawmakers. But as an attorney, particularly an employment law attorney, we do have some good laws on the books. We need to enforce them as well, and that's very important. And you can't really enforce them if you don't know what they are. So there has to be education and awareness about these laws. So we have a number of national challenges in this country. Oh. All right, I guess it's one by one. Okay. 1 in 4 college women will be sexually assaulted. Oh, it's not really wanting to come on now. Oh, great, thank you. Oh my gosh, there's a method to this. Okay, sorry. 2,400,000 report injuries from intimate partners. That's a huge number. We're 61st out of 184 countries on maternal deaths during pregnancy and childbirth, which is really shameful for an industrialized country. 1 in 4 women have been stalked in their lifetime, and nearly 22 million U.S. women have been raped or are victims of attempted rape, which is also a huge number. I think most of you are aware that how frequent a crime rape is. And every 9 seconds, a woman in the U.S. is assaulted or beaten. Women constitute 94% of the victims of murder-suicide in the U.S. That is just an astounding number. Women make 78 cents. This is nationally, and this is all women, to a white man's dollar. And it's a big gender gap. But women of color, it's a much larger gap. 64 cents for African Americans, 59 cents for Native Americans, and Latinas, it's 54 cents. And there are 56 women, since 56% of women live in poverty. So the majority of people in poverty are women. Okay, so you've all seen this, I'm sure. Human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights. So CEDAW, there were attempts to pass CEDAW, valiant attempts, continual attempts. Jimmy Carter signed it in 1980. It was also approved by the Senate in '94, by the Senate's Foreign Relations Committee. In 2002, it was again approved. 2010, there was a hearing in the Judiciary Committee, and when there were discussions about the Arab Spring in 2011 by Senators Boxer and Casey, again, CETA was highlighted. But unfortunately, it still has not been adopted nationally. So now we're going to talk about the Cities for CETA campaign. And here is the letter writing campaign. Dear Mayor and City Council members, end gender discrimination in my city today, Cities for CETA. And that's a very robust campaign, and the person who leads that campaign in our county is Taranay, whom you all know, and she's just been an outstanding leader who has pushed this forward even when there didn't seem to be the political will, but she continued to persist, and she really deserves a round of applause. She's a true hero to me, and if it weren't for her, we would have never made progress in this area. And she really was persistent in getting people involved in it, getting us really excited about us, and really reminding us about how we're going to win this thing and how we're going to move forward, and it's important for all of us to be engaged. So the heart of CETA, Cities for CETA, is a gender-based analysis. Because if you don't see the problem, then how are you going to rectify it? So this is an analytical tool used to assess how diverse groups of women, women, men, and gender diverse people may experience policies, programs, and initiatives. So to get the city to hire someone who's experienced to do this gender-based analysis. And it optimizes the impact of policies and programs for those who are most vulnerable. So it's not just equal pay, but it's also an analysis of the percentage of women and looking at every department too. So historically, in Santa Clara County, we were 72%. But recently, with the 2017 census, just look at how low Santa Clara County is. 62 cents for every dollar a white man makes. And that is really a terribly low number. Women make up 81% of Santa Clara County workers in healthcare support, and a median income is $36,400. Whereas in the highest paid jobs, the difference is 76%. But women only make up 22% of the workers in math and computers. So you can see how factoring in the low-wage workers, how that has an impact. So 9 cities and counties have passed variation of ordinances, and 17 cities and counties have passed resolutions, and our county is one of them. And San Jose is also, the city has passed them. At San Francisco, Berkeley, Cincinnati, Honolulu, LA, Miami-Dade, Pittsburgh, San Jose, Santa Clara County. And the task force was created, I mentioned Taranay led it, and the ordinance was passed, and we're in the process of the implementation of the gender-based analysis. We need CETA urgently now. It's more important than ever because with the current administration and the ascendancy of the right wing and their ideas, there is a real assault on women, women's rights, abortion rights, and just generally assaults on women's health. And so we really need CETA ordinances to be passed, and we need everyone's support because we want to make sure that CETA is implemented in a way that helps all of us. Thank you.
very much for this presentation. A lot of information I didn't know. Let's say as a woman who lives in a city that doesn't have SIDA, and let's say as an Iranian, I grew up in a place where democracy lacks, so I don't know really how to, approve a regulation, right? And I wanted to have SIDA approved in my city. So what do I do? Where do I start?
I would start by forming a task force of women that are representative ethnically and also in terms of the work that they do. And then after that, I would go to every city council or county supervisor and I would talk to them about SIDA. And I would educate them about SIDA. I would also, there's a website that Cities for SIDA that has a lot of really helpful information. And you can make little packets. I usually, and I've done this before because I work on a wage theft coalition and with human trafficking, and we've wanted to have things passed. So before I go, I usually send the packet to all the supervisors or the city council members and the mayor. And then we go and we talk to each of them. Sometimes we talk to the city manager, the city attorney if they have some kind of legal issues. And then it gets, we find our champion, the person that's going to be bringing it to either the Board of Supervisors or the City Council, and then we rally as many people as we can to come out to speak in favor of it, and fortunately we were able to get a positive result. And you can also, there's lots of us around that would be glad to work with you on that as well.
First of all, congratulations to you and Taraneh to leading these efforts in your county and in your city. I just want to add that the Cities for SIDA was an idea of Marilyn Fowler, the president of Women's Intercultural Network, which is a global network based in San Francisco, now moved to LA. That we were at UN in 2013, and we knew that SIDA hasn't been approved by US. So we thought, why don't we push it from bottom up? So the Cities for SIDA was actually the thought that Women's Intercultural Network, and the website, as you mentioned, the Cities for SIDA website. Now there are 10 counties in US, and the goal is to have 100 cities for SIDA by next year, either pass a resolution or have an ordinance for Cities for SIDA. And after San Francisco, now Los Angeles, the mayor of Los Angeles have an ordinance, and actually City of Los Angeles is one of the prime example of implementing SIDA at all the institution that part of it, not the county of Los Angeles, but City of Los Angeles. But anyway, thank you, congratulations on passing SIDA.
I want to thank you for all of your efforts and everything you've done. You're a real hero, and you've been an inspiration to all of us. And I'm glad you spoke because I have a lot of friends in LA. I'm going to a conference later this month, and I'm going to try to get them to come out and support. And I know there has been some work around wage theft and other issues, and there's a real robust community of not only activists, but community organizations in Los Angeles. So thanks so much. That was really, really helpful, and I appreciate it.
Anyway, we were very happy that your City of San Jose, with all your effort, passed SIDA with an ordinance.
Well, we were happy too, and as I said, Taraneh never gave up. She just wasn't going to accept defeat. We were going to succeed, and her vision was correct, and we were all really happy to work with her too.
I think we have time, so I have one more question. And I would like that package as well. I don't know if my city has
surprised not there, but whatever. My other questions, you mentioned that you run some studies to measure the gaps. One of the ones that you said was wage gap. What other kind of studies you recommend, or you run, or you recommend other people to run? And then considering the culture of Iran, anything else that might come to your mind that you could run that kind of study in Iran, because the gender gap is wider and bigger, different issues?
Well, there's an article in the Mercury News, if you Google it on the pay gap, and it refers to a study that the University of California at Berkeley did, but also there's a study that Working Partnerships USA did here, where they looked at census data from, and I think that that's important as well. But definitely there's people that do that type of work. And we've actually, because I've also worked at the county level, and at the county level we actually got an ordinance enacted on wage theft, but we got a policy that in order to do business with the county, you cannot have unpaid equal pay violations, and the people who bid have to disclose whether they've ever had an equal pay violation. And we worked with somebody from Biddle and Associates who was extremely good at, they had a gender-based analysis at the county, and he found flaws in it, so they're going to do some more. But he also does that kind of data work too, so definitely could connect you. I would expect Santa Cruz to be in the forefront, but sometimes the council is more conservative than the perception of the city. In Iran, I mean, you'd have to do the same thing as here. You'd have to have people come together and try to get people maybe who have the ear or the respect of, you know, the government, or at least of the councils, the local, whatever the local government is. I'm from Canada, we have a slightly different structure as well, but whatever the structure is. And then, you know, people write about it op-eds, you have panels, you have forums, and you educate and increase awareness. And also arm yourself with data, because when we got wage theft ordinances enacted to pull business licenses and permits, we had a report, so we could show, and we had heat maps, and we had graphs, and, you know, whatever way people want to learn, you know, so they can see right away that this is really something, because people really don't know about it. It's kind of like we have a law that it's illegal to say that you can't discuss your pay at work, but yet we all are in a culture where people think, oh, that's confidential. But how are we ever going to change it if we don't discuss our pay, if we aren't open about it?
Yep.
Sure.
Thank you, and thank you, Carolyn, for the great achievement. I'm inspired to actually take it to my city and start the discussion. I have a quick question. That wage gap for women, where does it, how is it calculated? Is it the aggregated sum? Is it for similar jobs? Because the government sector pays equally. Big companies for same job, it's illegal to pay different. So I wonder if the real situation is worse than what we see. How is it calculated?
Well, what they do is they aggregate it. And that's why it's not, I think, a really good number, because, as I said, it's 83% in math and computers, and there's only 22% of women there, whereas in healthcare and, you know, the jobs that are lower paid, it's much, much higher. So they average it out, and you're right, if there's a union or you're in the government, it's very unlikely that there's going to be a wage gap. However, when you're hired in, there may be. And actually, although I'm a lawyer now and pieces away from a PhD, I was a machinist for years. And I was hired in at a labor grade 6, even though I worked on the same machine as a man in the morning, and he came in the evening and finished the parts. He was a labor grade 9. And the welders, they were labor grade 2, the women, they were welding, and they called them assemblers. And the men were labor grade 7, and they were called assemblers. So when they were hired in, even though there was a union there, and everybody, you know, was supposed to make the same, they were hired in lower. And I think that's what happens sometimes at the government as well, that maybe you're hired in because at a lower grade. But once you're in, you're right. Once you're in the grade, you've got to be, because I worked at the EOC federally, you've got to be within that range as well. But to answer your question, it is an aggregate of all. So you have to drill down, and that's what they did at the county. They looked at physicians. And it depends on the specialty of the physician, too. In certain specialties, it was more equal than in others.
Do we also have an aggregated data regarding the level of skill of men versus women to balance this, make it more accurate, or no?
I think it's more just within the industry. But yeah, I think it's more just in the industry, but I think that's important as well.
And people who get paid under the table, like many women work inside the house as a helper, are they counted in, or is just official data of people who pay taxes?
It's based probably on people who pay taxes. I think the underground economy, it hasn't been gauged there, and I think it's a big difference. And I know I had a case once with a janitorial worker. She was paid under the table. She did the same work as a man, but they perceived of her as not as strong, even though she was a big woman, very strong, could do everything the man could do. So I'm sure, I think your point is that when people are paid under the table in the underground economy, we don't capture that data, so it may be very different. And I think that's a problem with data anyway, that you have to look at it skeptically. But still, even with the data they have, there is a gap.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker